Alrighty, sorry about the 6-minute delay. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Mecha Mondays. I'm your intrepid narrator slash pilot, Fragath, and today we're going to be reading more of Full Metal Panic Book 3, Trembling into the Blue. Let me see where I had marked things off. It would be good to know. Jeez Louise, these chapters are long. How long is that? If that's like 100 pages, I cannot do that. Okay. It's a little shy of 100 pages. Let's get through chapter 3 and go from there. Anyway, so previously on, I forgot how long the third book was. I was like, oh yeah, this will be great. And we're all just like one iffy day away from it taking longer than expected. So previously on, we finally found out the reason they wanted Chidori Kaname on the Tuatha De Danaan. It was to give her full military honors and be like, hey, thanks for helping out. We literally could not have succeeded in the climax of the last two books without you. So we're glad you were there. And then they have a birthday party for the Tuatha De Danaan, the boat itself, which had turned 1 year old right then and there, um, which I find somewhat difficult to credit. But the events of the first three books happen in pretty short order. They're over the course of less than a year, so I guess it tracks. Um, Hell, the events of the entire series are within a very short period of time. Um, Things happen quick. It's pretty relentless, which is nice on the one hand, and it's a lot on the other. Anyway, Tessa reveals to Chidori that some more information about the Whispered. They're basically all networked together in a. She doesn't use the term noosphere, but that's pretty much what they are. Um, Not quite telepathy, but close. Um, it's something that Tessa warns her against using because it's very basically you are prone to listening. The voices listen back, and they take over your brain, and you go crazy and kill yourself like her mentor did, who built the Arbalest, which is the mech that Sosuke now pilots, which has a Lambda driver installed. So it's not healthy to be a Whispered. And she says, where is it? She's got a good line here. Oh, she also the other thing she reveals is that there's someone else keeping an eye on her, someone out of Mithril's intelligence division, um, and Tessa does not know who it is. They are almost certainly nearby her most of the time, Kaname that is, but basically Sosuke is a giant distraction. Um, he's this big noisy bumbling idiot that all the people who want to abduct Kaname are focused on, but there's some other person in the shadows who's like actually gotten that nobody knows about that actually is more problematic or keeping an eye on her and is able to keep her safe. So there's a lot of resources being dedicated to her safety at this point. Um, there was some good zinger about the Whispered here. Let me just skim through here real quick. Um, oh yeah, she does this tea analogy. Here we go. Uh, Or like the internet? Kaname guessed. On a much smaller scale and involving fewer people, yes, Tessa agreed. But resonance is a very dangerous act. You want to avoid it as much as possible. How come? Kaname frowned. It sounds like a really convenient power. Convenience always comes at a cost, Kaname-san, Tessa said, with a hint of admonishment. I've told you before, but the resonance between Whispered is a sharing of thoughts. It is not a conversation or a transmission. It's a melding. Even if it's kept brief, one wrong move, and you may end up forgetting who you are. Think of it like this. She picked up the milk dispenser and poured it into her tea, where the cup became a swirl of red and white. Stirring the tea and milk to mix. Stirring caused the tea and milk to mix until it was all the same color, an opaque agate. Once blended together like this, the tea and the milk can never be separated again. This is fine for tea, but it just makes the taste more pleasant. But it must not be done with human minds. It will shatter your identity and bring your life as you know it to an end. So, being a whispered getting those nice high test scores on science and math were cool and all, but there is a downside. Um, I don't remember how far the manga got. I think it covered all through the final arc of the story of the light novels. I'm pretty sure it did. There's some details that the manga changed, but I can't remember what they are, and I don't think they really matter in a big way. It's stuff that they like added from that the TV series tweaked. I want to say they added some of the side story humor fluff in. I don't remember if they added the Fumofo stuff where Sosuke has to wear a weaponized mascot uniform powered armor. Bonta-kun, which is it's the best. It is truly excellent. It's dumb, but it's really funny. Um, Entertaining anyway. At any rate, let's get rocking and a rolling here on chapter 3 of book 3. Let me get a little water in my mouth. I'm getting a little manky in here. Chapter 3: Water pressure, gravitational pressure, political pressure. 27 August, 1857 hours, local time, near Republic of Perio. The Tuatha De Danaan had arrived a few dozen kilometers northeast of the Republic of Perio. The waves were peaceful, and the tropical coral reefs sparkled in the setting sun. Below the water a massive vessel moved, hugging the line between the burning red and the dusky darkness. It was like an image from a painting, one that symbolized looming misfortune. It had a black silhouette, like a knife or like a shark. Its elegant curves belied the potential for slaughter and destruction. If any fish could take in the entirety of its form, it would have fled without a second's thought. Inside the De Danaan, preparations for battle were proceeding swiftly. 27 August, 1436 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. First briefing room, Tuatha De Danaan. "Briefing commence!" Captain Gale McAllen declared to the chatting soldiers as he entered the room. There were 32 combatants in the briefing room in all. They were all wearing casual battle dress. Just before the operation itself, they would all change into their going out clothes, fatigues, flight suits, and AS operator uniforms. Sosuke looked up from the book he was reading, and the other soldiers stopped their chatter. Kurtz, sitting behind Sosuke, showed no such respect. He continued to talk in hushed tones to his nearby comrade, Corporal Yang Jun-Kyu. "Could you stop talking, please?" Captain McAllen said pointedly. Yeah, sure. From the corner of the large LCD screen, Captain McAllen glared at his subordinate. Oh, he's Australian. Sugar. Well, an Australian, he was Major Kalainen's aide, and he also held the SRT's top call sign Uruz 1. His expression, relaxed during the bingo tournament, was now drawn taut. Everyone here, he called out again. The Major will now go over the plan. Listen up. Major Kalainen walked past him to stand in front of the group. He looked down at the clipboard he was holding, then began speaking, without any preface. As you already know, a United States military facility has been occupied by an armed group. His tone was completely neutral, as if he was reporting next week's cleaning duties. A U.S. Navy strike team has already tried and failed to take it back. He went on. As this is a special case, we'll be using our more advanced technology to hold a rematch on their behalf. Our primary mission is suppression of enemy ASs and hostage rescue, as well as preventing the destruction of that crucial facility. Here is the party venue, he said, turning on the large screen. He put a disc into the slot in the side, which brought up a 3D map of the island. It was a small, elliptical plot of land, with cliffs on the west side that sloped gradually to a sandy beach on the east. The U.S. base took up the majority of its area. The chemical munitions disposal facility on Beryl Daub Island in the Republic of Perio. Its purpose is to neutralize aging chemical warheads and incinerate them. This means they hold stockpiles of sarin, tabun, soman, and other nerve gases, several hundred tons of them. Nearly everyone in the room looked distressed. They knew that even words like toxic didn't begin to cover the threat those chemical weapons posed. The armed group in question calls themselves the Green Salvation Army. Their stated objective is to drive the tourism industry out of Perio to save the coral reefs, on threat of unleashing the poison gas. That's crazy. If they can't protect it, put it out of its misery, huh? There's a bad joke if I ever heard one. The various team members threw in their comments. Some even let out a low chuckle, reflecting a black sense of humor. What's a dangerous facility like that doing in a tourist site like Perio, anyway? The hazardous nature of such facilities make them a challenge to build on American soil, Kalainen responded. Public opinion, state elections, lobbyists, etc. It's all politics. Not that I expect that to reassure you. Typical. The soldier who asked shrugged. At the same time, Perio was an American territory until recently, he went on. Even though it's officially independent now, it's still under U.S. protection and economically and militarily at their mercy. They were essentially forced to accept the facility. Sosuke, quietly listening to his words, found it to be a familiar story. Poor countries and regions always drew the short straw on hosting military bases, landfills, nuclear plants, facilities that were often magnets for armed conflict by themselves. Kalainen continued his speech. Regardless, the site is dangerous, and we need to get the Green Salvation Army out of there. Let's zoom in on the base itself. He manipulated the screen to magnify the 3D image. There were several low buildings, residential facilities, and offices, a short runway and a heliport, but no harbor. In the middle of the CG model was one large facility built halfway into the hillside. This was the warehouse and disposal site for the chemical warheads. The live chemical warheads are stored in an underground warehouse here. From the information we've received, the terrorists have a large number of bombs hooked up to that warehouse. Then if they go off, a soldier interjected, the force of the blast will carry catastrophic amounts of nerve gas into the upper atmosphere, from which it will travel downwind to the islands. It takes only 1 milligram of this gas to kill an adult human being. It could end all life in the Perio archipelago in a day, Kalainen said plainly. A gloomy silence fell. Every soldier there seemed to have the same expression. Their faces read, I want to go back to Merida Island. Therefore, we first need to disable the bombs, Kalainen said, pressing onward. Then we need to dispatch the enemy forces while securing the American soldiers they've taken hostage. He makes it sound so easy. Talk about your crazy schemes. Why is it always like this? The soldiers grumbled to themselves. Captain McAllen yelled over them. Shut up! This is what you're being paid for! They fell back into a reluctant silence. Kalinin continued his explanation as though nothing had happened. The enemy forces include 9 ASs and 5 autonomous AAAs. The LCD screen switched to an image of one of the enemy arm slaves. Its armor was rounded. Its silhouette resembled a person wearing a down vest. It was similar to the American-made M6, but it had a small periscope in place of a head. These are the enemy ASs, Mithril 2s, made by France's Gatou Co. They're common throughout the Islamosphere and parts of South America, and despite their simple electronics, they're tough little machines. Just then, a helicopter pilot raised a hand. Yes? I have a question. These Mithril 2s, they're still in use by proper militaries, aren't they? How did these terrorists get their hands on so many? Kalinin paused. In mid-July, a transport ship set to deliver them to the Indonesian army went missing in the ocean near Sri Lanka. It was found sunk 3 days later, with the cargo and most of the crew missing. Aha, said the pilot. Either the crew had been bought off, or they'd been in league with the terrorists from the start. Back to the subject at hand. We can fight these French ASs with the standard equipment and tactics, same for the anti-air cannons. But there is one enemy AS that will demand the strictest caution. Kalinin swapped out the image on the screen. It was now a picture of the one enemy AS, and Sosuke gulped slightly when he saw it. Kurtz, behind him, let out a small groan. As if noticing their reactions, Mao glanced back from a seat some distance away. The other members of the squad frowned at the unfamiliar machine. That was it. The same machine he'd fought 4 months ago. It was red instead of silver, and the shape of the head was slightly different. But there was no doubt about it. It was back. Of course, its operator at the time, Gowron, was dead now, but Sosuke had remained haunted by visions of the dangerous man's specter roaming about the base. This one machine took out an entire U.S. Special Forces squadron, Kalinin was saying. It's unclear what country it belongs to, but it's third generation, like the M9. It's powered by a palladium reactor, so it's amazingly quiet. And while rudimentary, we believe it also has an ECS capable of invisibility mode. That's probably why it's painted red. An ECS was a stealth device capable of hiding a machine from various parts of the electromagnetic spectrum, such as radar and infrared. Mithril's cutting-edge ECSs could even cloak the visible light spectrum, but technologically speaking, it was harder to mask the shorter wavelength side of it. Violet, for example. Longer wavelength colors like red were comparatively easier to hide. In other words, said one of the soldiers, it's like our machines, good for sneaking around and surprise attacks? That's right. Use your ECCSs. The ECCS was the ECS counter sensor. This machine is also mounted with a special device that renders normal attacks ineffective. If you run into this AS, Kalinin looked around at those assembled, try to avoid a direct engagement. In other words, run. The group was baffled by this. Run? No way! It's a counterinsurgency mission. Why bother even having a raid at all? A chorus halfway between genuine and sarcastic complaints rose up, and the room was soon plunged into chaos. Captain McAllen shouted, "Be quiet!" again, but it was less effective this time. Just then, Kurtz looked up at the ceiling and raised his voice irritably. "Do you guys want to die or something?" His voice wasn't as loud as McAllen's, but for some reason his words seemed to carry. All present turned questioning gazes to Kurtz. "The Major's right. That thing's dangerous. You've never seen anything like it. Not even 57mm shells will work on it. It basically cheats." Does he use the Force like Darth Vader? One incorrigible member of the squad asked him. Kurtz glared at him. "Yeah, that's right. It uses the Force." "Sounds rough. We'd better see Yoda about some training." The team member laughed. Kurtz didn't. "You all seem to be laboring under a misunderstanding," Kalinin said after waiting patiently for things to quiet down. "When I tell you to run, that is neither advice nor a request. It's an order. Anyone who ignores it will be severely punished. That is, assuming you survive." The room fell silent again. "We're assigning this AS the name Venom," he continued. "It's extremely dangerous, and we must dispose of it to finish our mission. Thus, the task of engaging and destroying the Venom will be left to Sergeant Sagara." The other soldiers looked over at Sosuke for the first time. Sosuke wasn't particularly surprised. He was expecting to be pitted against it. "With the arbalest, you mean?" he asked, as if in confirmation. "Yes," Kalinin confirmed. "If you encounter the Venom, you're to assist the others in withdrawing. Keep it locked down with coordinated attacks and melee, and keep it completely occupied. That's our only path to victory." "And if I fail?" Meeting Sosuke's gaze head-on, Kalinin responded evenly. "Then the mission fails. Then the mission fails. The Venom will destroy all of your allies." Sosuke fell silent, as if the weight of everyone else in the room had been placed on his shoulders. He'd faced the possibility of death in countless missions before now, but it had always meant his death alone, as a single combatant. If he made a mistake, he'd have been the only one to die. Of course, that was no laughing matter, but the point was, he bore no more responsibility than any other member of the team. He was a mere mercenary, a supporting character, just one more notch on the death tally. At least, he had been. That had all seemed to have changed that day, the day he met the arbalest and Chidori Kaname. The existence of that AS and of that girl meant that failure was no longer an option for him. "I can't afford to lose," he realized. "I can't afford to make any mistakes. I'm not even allowed to die." The pressure was horrifying, yet Sosuke simply gazed at the floor with his usual sullen expression and responded, quietly, "Understood." "Good. Do your duty as an NCO." Their operations commander turned back to the group. "Deployment will be aquatic, retrieval by helicopter. We'll be sending 6 ASs divided into 3 teams: strike team, sniper team, and bomb disposal team. And I have good news for the bomb disposal team regarding your infiltration route. This concludes the mission outline. The captain will explain the details. McAllen?" "Sir." Kalinin stepped back and McAllen stepped forward. "First, the makeup of the AS teams. Strike team will be me and Sagara. Sniper team will be Weber and Nguyen. Bomb squad will be Mao and Donegan. The rest of the SRT will stand by in the helicopter as commanders for infantry squads. In addition, radio frequencies will be..." "27 August, 1621 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Main hangar, Tuatha De Danaan." After the briefing, Sosuke headed for the main hangar for a discussion with the head engineer. The ARX-7 Arbalest had been painted dark gray overnight. It was a pure stopgap measure. Its white armor stood out too much for a stealth mission, so they were covering it up with the same dark gray paint used for the M9s. Like the M9s, the Arbalest had a human-like silhouette. It had flexible joints and long, slender limbs. At the same time, it had power. It brought to mind the image of an agile yet strong warrior. The shape of the head was also strange. Below the keen eyes of its dual sensors sat a hard point for holding a weapon. It gave the Arbalest a distinctive face, like a ninja with a scroll in its mouth from some old period piece. There were 2 feather-like attachments on each of its shoulders, heat sinks that helped with cooling. You could also affix subcapacitors of a similar shape, or even weapons to them. These distinctive parts and sharp-looking form gave the machine an air of the divine. It was as if just touching it would be blasphemy. That was the first impression that most people got. And it wasn't actually wrong. The equipment of that inscrutable device known as the Lambda Driver really did make the Arbalest a kind of mystical presence. According to the engineer who looked after it, the Lambda Driver was comprised of 3 major components. The first was a device called the Taros, which connected to the cockpit. This was short for Transfer and Response Omnisphere, but no one knew what it meant, including the engineer herself. What she did understand, if vaguely, was that it picked up pulses from the pilot's nervous system and converted them into special kinds of electric signals, which in turn activated certain functions in the machine. The second was a small module, about the size of a mini-fridge, that formed the Lambda driver's core. Inside it was apparently a cylinder of laser-like rainbow light, but she had no idea what function it served. Activating it seemed to consume a massive amount of power in an instant, which was why the machine carried spare capacitors. This module was directly connected to the machine's AI, Al, but no matter how many times she analyzed the software, she couldn't figure out the nature of their connection. The last was the skeleton that served as the machine's framework. It was fundamentally identical to the M9's, made of a titanium alloy and ceramic composite, but its core had been infused with a strange material. Delicate crystals wove together in complex patterns like nerves, changing their arrangements when hit with an electrical current. But once again, what function that served was a mystery to her. In other words, it was a cascade of things she didn't understand. Whenever the AI Al was booted up, the display insisted Sergeant Sagara's presence required to activate Lambda driver. It didn't reject other operators exactly. The Lambda driver simply wouldn't activate for them. All attempts to delete the requirement had failed. Formatting Al didn't work either. Any other methods they'd tried to strong arm it simply caused Al to display an error message and lock up. And that's basically it. I give up, the young chief engineer, Second Lieutenant Nora Lemming, said as she threw up her hands lightly. All I can say is that this machine amplifies mental energy or something like that. Not that I'm a fan of that woo-woo sort of thing. What happened to the person who made it? Sosuke's tight frown became tighter as he looked up at the arbalest. I was told that he died, the lieutenant said carefully. The only one who knows more about the Lambda driver than me is the captain. But even she mainly seems to know about the Taros. I see. So we can't actually build another of this thing. Thankfully, we had some spares, so we managed to fix the arm you shot off. But if you lose your left arm again, we'll have to start subbing in M9 parts. Oh, be careful, Sosuke promised. But don't worry, you've successfully managed to activate it twice in a real fight. I think you have a gift. Gift? Yes, a wonderful gift given by God. So have faith in yourself, Sergeant Sagara, the lieutenant said with a smile. August 27, 1655 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Galley, Tuatha De Danaan. Despite how interesting the place was, after a day, Kaname inevitably ran out of new things to see. The boat's scenery became monotonous, and she had nothing to occupy herself with. Sosuke and the others had vanished off to some meeting or another, and she had barely seen Tessa since that morning. She stopped by the control room, but the other girl was talking with the guy who'd led Kaname's welcome yesterday, and she didn't do more than glance at her and wave. Kaname was bored and wanted to go home. Apparently, the boat would finish its job and be back in base in about 2 days. Kaname was told that if she wanted, a helicopter could take her and Sosuke back to base earlier, and they could head back to Tokyo from there. But that, too, would have to wait until their job, the mission, was finished. Thus, she'd have to find some way to kill time here until tomorrow. Left with no other option, she'd chosen to head to the galley and help the cook. She chopped furiously through a mountain of onions, followed by carrots and then potatoes. The work seemed endless, which made it a perfect distraction. "You're good at that, you know," the young cook, one of the few Japanese people on the ship, said, seeming genuinely impressed with her knife skills. "Why, thank you," Kaname agreed. "You know how to use an oven, too," the cook observed. "Why not quit school and join our crew? I'll teach you the secrets of deep-sea cooking." "Not my bag, thanks," she laughed. Just then, an announcement came over the speakers. "This is your captain." It was Tessa's voice. "We will soon be entering the area of operations. There will be no hostile vessels on or in the water during this mission, and this vessel is not expected to engage in active combat. We will, as usual, remain in the shadows, which should not be difficult given the power of this vessel and the skill of all aboard. Be precise and cautious, and do your jobs as you always do. May God watch over us all." She could be heard. She could be heard clearing her throat, and then "Now proceed to secondary battle stations. That is all." The message ended. A bell telling them to take battle stations, likely electronic, though it sounded just like a real one, rang out. From the galley, Kaname could see a handful of crew members who had been relaxing in the mess quickly spring to life and run out to take their posts. "Ah, here we go," the cook muttered. With faint trepidation, Kaname asked, "Are they going to fight?" "Yeah, but don't worry," the cook reassured her. "The boat itself won't engage, just the members of the SRT." "SRT?" she questioned. "The Special Response Team. You know, like Sergeant Sagara." "Sosuke is going to go fight, then." The thought sent a new wave of anxiety flooding over her. She'd seen him fight in the past, and they'd certainly been through a lot together, but she'd never been in quite this situation before. Going to fight. Something about the future tense made it all feel more real. "Hey, I gotta go, okay?" "Huh?" Kaname ran out of the galley, leaving the startled cook staring after her. She fought her way past crewmen rushing to their battle stations, down the hall to the duty room where Sosuke and the others slept. It was already empty. Her next few guesses also turned up nothing, so she ran to the hangar and... Ah! Sosuke was standing in front of his AS. It was already armed for bear, conversing with a jumpsuit-clad woman. He was dressed in his black AS operator's outfit, holding a clipboard-like tablet. A little ways away, Kurtz and Mao were hanging out with an East Asian combatant whose name she didn't know. "Kaname?" Kurtz was the first to notice her. "Where's the fire, huh? Oh, I get it. You ran all this way to bring me a good luck charm. It never fails. A locket with a girl's pubic..." Kurtz doubled over abruptly from an elbow to the solar plexus. Mao, the guilty party, was rubbing her temples. "If only I knew why you were like this." She redirected her attention. "So, how can we help you, Kaname?" I'm not really... I just... Kaname dissembled. She wasn't sure what she had come here for either. She glanced in Sosuke's direction and saw him still talking shop with the engineer. He hadn't noticed Kaname's presence at all. He looked extremely focused and probably wasn't about to come over for a chat. "I get it. It's not safe for you to be here, though. The ASs will be walking around just before we deploy." Right. "We're getting ready for battle right now," Mao finished gently. "So, sorry to ask, but, you know..." Kaname caught her meaning. She was politely telling her to leave. Swallowing a faint feeling of alienation, she nodded. "Right. Sorry to be in the way." Kaname didn't have any choice but to turn around and go. She got as far as the hangar door, then looked back one more time. Mao was pressing her hands together in apology, while Kurtz waved to her casually. Sosuke still hadn't noticed her. So far away, his back to her, he seemed like the most distant person in the world. "I mean, it's not like it's the last time I'm ever going to see him," Kaname thought, and then let out a sigh. August 27, 1750 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Tuatha De Danaan, 15 miles northeast of Berildaub Island. So that's spelled Berildaob. I should know how that's pronounced. Berildaub? Berildaob. Berildaub. I'm not really sure. Anyway, that's in the Perio Archipelago. I'm reasonably confident these are all fictional locations. This is a fictional location. Her subordinates' voices chorused. Oh, excuse me. Her subordinates' voices chorused through the control room as the deployment drew near. Current depth 80, speed 3 knots, EMFC all green. Turtle 1, depth 10, 5, hold. Sonar, no vessels detected above. Contact on ESM, U.S. Navy cruisers. Analyzing now. Current 4 knots from northwest. There's a faint breeze on the surface. Uruz 1, I've entered the first airtight chamber. Oh, who's Uruz 7? I think that's... Or is he Uruz 6? Can anyone tell me which number he is? Oh, yep, that's him. Uruz 7. AS entry to second airtight chamber complete. ESM analysis complete. Bearing 080, Arleigh Burke class. Bearing... Oh, wait, no, that's the ESM guy. ESM analysis complete. Bearing 080, Arleigh Burke class. Bearing 079, Ticonderoga class. Estimate range at least 30 miles each. Starboard, first ATC technician. Closure of interior hatch is complete. Pressure secured. Port, second ATC technician. Closure of interior hatch is complete. Pressure secured. Ready to flood any time. The reports poured in to Tessa, who paid each of them the necessary amount of attention while swiftly dishing out orders of her own. Good, she said. Flood ATCs 1 through 6. Aye, Mom. Flood ATCs 1 through 6, Mardukas responded. This time the ASs would deploy from the water. They'd swim unnoticed to the destination island, then launch a surprise attack. The submarine had 3 AS-sized airlocks on either side of the hangar from which the M9s and the ARX-7 could exit. They were currently housing Captain McCallan and his AS team. All she had to do now was open the hatches. All right. Tessa ran her final checks, then scanned the ocean's surface. She took control of a turtle with a small joystick and manipulated its optical sensors. For a very brief time, she had the floating robot deploy a small periscope. She swiveled it 360 degrees. The things it saw came through, crystal clear, on her captain's screen. She could see the sea at night. This far from any light pollution, the sky was clear and beautiful. All around the horizon, stars glittered in bountiful color. It was a breathtaking sight. A foolish notion flitted through her mind. What if she canceled the operation and surfaced the boat? Then, what if they all went topside and breathed in the fresh air, while she and he gazed up at those stars together, for real? It was a wonderful thought. Captain? Mardukas asked. Then, as if nothing had happened, Tessa switched her screen to night vision mode and checked for local ships and aircraft. All clear. Now for the dispatch. She glanced at the status board on the front screen. It gave the current state of the airlocks, with corresponding diagrams and labels. Second ATC, ARX-7, Uruz 7. Don't worry, he's good at what he does, and Mao and Kurtz and the others are with him, aren't they? Talitha Testarossa set aside her thoughts, took in a deep breath, and gave the order. All AS hatches open. Aye, Mom. All AS hatches open. Sosuke felt a jolt and heard a muffled gurgle as the second hatch opened. Water began to pour in all around his machine. His night vision sensors showed green ocean filling in all around him. The Arbalest was currently equipped with an underwater pack, a unit clasped around its torso which carried an oxygen mask, oxygen tank, ballast, and high-powered pump jets. In an emergency, it could also unfold into a hydrofoil to let the machine skate across the water's surface at high speeds. The Arbalest and the M9s weren't designed to be fully watertight, so their dive depth was limited to about 40 meters. For most operations, though, that was more than enough. Okay, he thought before cranking up the output of his pump jets to sail his machine out of the airlock. The hatch closed immediately behind them. The M9s deploying from the other hatches trailed streams of tiny bubbles as they overtook the Arbalest. A laugh came over the radio. Okay, bring on the resort hopping. It was Kurtz's voice, and Sosuke could see one of the M9s spinning around in the water.
Don't mess around, idiot. Aw, but don't butt me. Darn it, let's go.
The call came from Captain McAllen's M9 just before it started on the move. The Arbalest and 4 M9s followed after, holding watertight containers carrying their weapons in both hands. They formed a neat column, a kind of formation, and swam forward at a depth of 30 meters, picking up speed as they went. Behind them, the De Danaan's bow began to tilt downward as it left to dive to even greater depths.
That's right, Sosuke realized in that moment. I never said anything to Chidori.
They spent about 20 minutes swimming. The ocean was pitch black, but the sea floor below was just visible to their night vision sensors. That hadn't been the case just a few minutes ago. The increasing shallowness signified that they were getting closer to land. They could see tropical fish swimming in and out among some scraggly rocks nearby. Their colors would probably be dazzling in the light of day.
Sosuke?
Mao asked over the radio. She wasn't using the mission channel.
Yes? You seem a little worked up. Are you?
The sudden question caught Sosuke off guard. It took him a moment to respond.
What do you mean?
You don't have to hide it, she said reassuringly. Nobody else uses this channel.
I'm not hiding anything, he protested.
Oh, come on, she scoffed. You didn't even notice Kaname before, did you?
Before? When?
Mao made a noise of bemusement.
See, you're not even looking at the world around you. You're worried about what the Major said, right? About that venom thing.
Well, of course I am, he said stiffly. If I make one mistake, everyone on the team will die. It's natural that I should keep in mind the importance of...
Don't do that, Mao said, cutting him off.
You need to not sweat that stuff.
What? Sosuke was confused. I would think you, of all people.
McAllen was heading up this particular operation, but Mao often assumed the leadership role for their smaller three-man team. She was a very responsible person, so it was strange to hear her say something like that.
Oh, come on, she sighed. If I ran myself ragged over everything like you're doing now, I'd be screwing up constantly. You can't let yourself focus on what's riding on your performance. You need to tell yourself it'll all work out, or else the pressure's gonna break you.
But...
So it's not enough to protect Kaname. You want to protect us, too?
Sosuke gulped and struggled for an answer. Mao let out a small laugh in response.
The concern is appreciated, but I'll pass. Kurtz and McAllen and the others would say the same thing.
Sosuke probably would too, in their position. They weren't just any soldiers, they were hand-picked elites capable of protecting themselves. He knew that. They wouldn't take unnecessary risks, and if they were in danger, they knew how to get clear. In other words, she was right.
You're right, he said eventually. I'll keep that in mind.
Attaboy. Talk to you later.
Mao closed her channel. But, Sosuke found himself thinking less than a minute later,
but normal ASs don't stand a chance against that thing. It took out 12 American machines all by itself.
That was an unshakable fact.
If I lose, it's all over.
No matter how he tried, he just couldn't get that thought out of his mind. Soon after, orders came through on the mission channel.
Arus 1 to squad. We've just passed the third waypoint. This is where we split into our 3 teams. Got it?
After passing the waypoint, the 6 machines would move to their respective stations. The infiltration team would disable the bombs on the chemical weapons, the suppression team would make landfall and attack the base directly, and the sniper team would back up the land team and keep an eye on the island as a whole. Thus, the counterinsurgency would kick off with attacks from 3 directions: from underground, from the beach, and from outside enemy shooting range.
Arus 2, roger. Arus 6, roger. Arus 7, roger. Arus 10, roger. Arus 12, roger.
After each unit gave its response, they dispersed, in teams of 2, to their designated areas. The infiltration team consisted of Mao and Sergeant Dunnigan. Dunnigan was born in the American South, Louisiana, and he'd started out as a paratrooper in the U.S. Army. There were signs of premature aging in his appearance, even though he couldn't be much older than Mao, but he was in amazing shape, with a musculature that let him lift a 100-kilogram barbell effortlessly. Not only was he an AS operator, but he was also an expert with explosives, which was probably why he'd been chosen for this team. The first stage of their job would be to go on ahead to the other four, infiltrate the place where the chemical weapons were being held, and disable the bombs reportedly planted there. They'd be infiltrating from underground. The western side of the island terminated in a low cliff, and there was an old tunnel under the waterline. It had been dug out over 50 years ago to serve as a secret dock and submarine port for the old Japanese Imperial Navy. The passage of time and countless earthquakes since had collapsed and submerged it, and it had proceeded to fall out of memory for everyone, including the current US Armed Forces. The deepest part of the tunnel was separated from the storage facility by a rock wall about 2 meters thick. Their plan was to open a hole with a drill, use a fiber scope to look around inside the storehouse, then blow through. After that, they would bust in and take out the detonators.
Approaching land now, Dunnigan said. Time to cut the jets.
Yeah, I hear you, Mao replied. The pump jets on their backpacks died down, and the flow of tiny bubbles ceased. Instead, they used the AS-sized flippers attached to the M9's feet to proceed onward at a depth of 5 meters. Dunnigan's swimming technique was so perfect it was hard to believe he'd come out of a land fighting force. She'd heard he had plenty of live combat experience, that he'd been through several dangerous missions during his time in the army, that he'd earned multiple Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars. He was the polar opposite of Mao, who'd been dishonorably discharged from the Marines without a single notable accomplishment to her name. That wasn't the reason, but she and Dunnigan weren't especially close. He'd come to them from Mithril's South Atlantic battle group, the Neem... Oh, jeez. I don't know how this is pronounced. Neimheadh. 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 DH, if it's going with Celtic, how does a DH work? I don't remember how the DH works. My knowledge of Celtic is extremely loose, and that might not be Celtic, that might be Old English. Neimheadh. Only 2 months prior, and while she knew he was a skilled combatant, she still didn't know much about him as a person. As they got to within a mile of the island, Dunnigan began grumbling.
Such a crock of shit.
What is? She asked.
This dumbass mission, sending us out into the back end of nowhere. Couldn't they get someone else?
Mao groaned. Stop complaining. No one can handle this stuff but us.
Who even gives a rat's ass? What are the bombs going to do if they go off? I mean, other than wiping out the piss-poor locals.
Mao couldn't believe her ears. Dunnigan?
Hey, I'm just joking around. Don't take it so personal, Chinese, he said with a chuckle.
Mao responded, voice firm, unwilling to let it go. To just let it go. That's not something to joke about while we're on a mission. And my name isn't Chinese. It's Melissa Mao.
Yeah, he chuckled. Well, unclench already. I'll do my job. You can count on it.
I certainly hope so, she muttered. Once they were in the vicinity of the island, the two machines let the current carry them to the western shore. Thanks to HF sonar and GPS data, they immediately found their destination, the sunken tunnel. Its entrance was blocked by crumbled concrete and rocks. There wasn't even enough space for a person to slip through. Fortunately, such an obstacle was no match for an M9, and at night, with the waves high, there was no risk of the enemy catching them at work. The greater risk, in fact, was the possibility of an enemy trap. If it was clear the enemy already knew about this route, they'd have to call off the operation. They'd back off and withdraw, and warn the other allies to return in secret. Their other allies. They'd have to scrap their existing plan and figure out another way to go about it. An outside observer might find this idea agonizing, but it was better than trying to ram an unworkable plan through. A typical special operation was a much more mundane, patient endeavor than what was typically depicted in the movies. Fortunately, it didn't seem that would be necessary this time. Mao used the full range of her M9 sensors to scan for danger, slowly and carefully, but found no sign of traps or surveillance in the tunnel. "We're good to go?" Dunnigan asked.
Affirmative, Mao responded. I'm positive we're safe.
"In we go, then. Come on." The two machines pushed the rocks aside and entered the tunnel. They couldn't keep up radio contact while underground, so they left a wired relay device at the tunnel entrance. The sniper team consisted of Kurtz and Corporal Nguyen. Nguyen came out of the Vietnamese army. He had long experience in jungle warfare and considerable skills in knife combat. He also knew a lot about AS firearms, both Eastern and Western. He had a lean frame and olive skin, and despite his hollow cheeks and somewhat sickly appearance, he wasn't someone you wanted to cross. His affinity with knives had made him as sharp-eyed as a hawk. Nguyen, like Dunnigan, had transferred to the squad 2 months ago. They hadn't run too many operations together, but he seemed like a reliable workhorse type. He also had a sense of humor.
"006 here," Kurtz said. "We're almost to the sniper point. Time to set depth to 0.
Yeah, I see it. Just make sure your ass doesn't stick out of the water,"
Nguyen responded, and adjusted his M9's position. The sniper team had arrived in the sea 4 kilometers west of Bereldaub Island. It was shallow there, with a water depth of only 4 meters, enough that an M9 could stand with its upper torso out of the water. It was from here that they'd pick off the enemy ASs and anti-aircraft artillery around the occupied base. The American M6s couldn't be effective at this range, but the M9s had the equipment and the fire control systems to make it possible.
"Got any PFZs in mind?"
Nguyen asked, inquiring about their attack targets.
"Nah, why bother?" Kurtz shrugged. "I'll shoot the guys on the right, you shoot the guys on the left. Simple, right?"
You sure about that?
Nguyen checked again.
"Sure, I'm sure."
The two began their preparations. Kurtz's machine staked out a position 100 meters away from Nguyen's, then opened the weapons container it had been carrying. Kurtz would be using a 76mm sniper cannon. It was about as powerful as you could get, as far as standalone AS artillery went. It was also tops for accuracy, and came with independent optical and self-diagnostic sensors, as well as a trajectory calculation computer. Nguyen's machine came armed with an 8-round surface-to-surface missile launcher. It fired a modified version of the Hellfire air-to-surface missiles that were frequently used by combat helicopters. They were precise, powerful, and used smokeless rocket motors that made them harder for the enemy to spot.
"Here's hoping the infiltration team can handle this," Kurtz whispered. "Here's hoping the infiltration team can handle this," Kurtz whispered.
Nguyen snorted on the other end of the line.
"If they screw up, I'm out of here. They're not paying me enough to have a shootout in a gas cloud." "No kidding," Kurtz laughed.
Nguyen continued his grumbling.
"Mithril's got great equipment and they pay well, but I hate all the niggling crap that comes with their missions. Guarding hostages, watching for chemical weapons. The whole thing gives me an ulcer. You get what I'm saying? If running out guns blazing was all the job took, they wouldn't pay us the big bucks."
The delicate demands of their missions was what justified their equipment and salaries. Even Kurtz, with all his constant complaints, knew that much.
"But Kurtz, we're mercenaries, killers for hire. Fighting our clients' enemies is one thing, but risking our lives for all this other stuff, it's kind of a violation of contract, isn't it?" "Is it? I never read the contract."
Nguyen groaned.
"Are you kidding me? We might be in a rotten business, but it's still a business, you know." "I just don't see how it's that big a deal."
Fine, forget it. If I decide it's not worth it, I'll just find a new job.
"Find a new job, huh?"
Kurtz responded absently. He was too worried about Sosuke to pay much mind to Nguyen's idle talk. That AS, the Arbalest. He'd been wondering for a while why the operator had to be Sosuke, when both McAllen and Mao seemed like a better fit.
Protecting Kaname, operating prototypes, wasn't it a little cruel putting all that responsibility onto one kid's shoulders?
He's wound up tight enough as it is.
Kurtz was well aware of Sosuke's innate earnestness and his sense of responsibility. He honestly liked that about him, though he'd never, ever admit it. But it was possible those traits could but was it possible those traits could play against him in this case?
Well, no big.
Kurtz reassured himself. If that venom thing showed its face, his sniper cannon would have some things to say about it. Even if the 76mm rounds didn't land a decisive blow, he could at least make it easier for Sosuke to do his thing. Under the water, Kurtz waited for the battle to start. Sosuke and Captain McAllen were serving as the strike team. The second Mao and Dunnigan disabled the bombs, Kurtz and Guin would kick off their long-range attacks. Sosuke and McAllen would rush onto land at top speed and sweep through what was left, while Mao's team came up from the storehouse to assist. Once the AS battle began in earnest, the De Danaan would surface. Helicopters full of infantry would take off, then fly in to occupy the base. That was the plan in a nutshell. Sosuke's Arbalest and McAllen's M9 were already within 600 meters of the beach. This was far closer than a gas turbine-powered M6 could get unnoticed, but even their highly advanced machines would be spotted by the enemy if the water got any shallower. While the De Danaan could use its ECS even when surfaced, the M9s and the Arbalest had to be fully out of water to use theirs. The Arbalest poked its head above water to get a read on the current state of the island. The night vision mode employed by its dual sensors showed Sosuke a base surrounded by a fence. Illuminated by bright lights, it was a squat structure that openly bore the scars of the battle it had just been through. Sosuke remained silent. He could see one of the enemy's anti-aircraft artillery, a turret with two machine cannons mounted on tank treads. The Arbalest's AI ran an automatic analysis and displayed detailed information on the weapon. It was a 2S-6M Tunguska, a self-propelled surface-to-air cannon made in the USSR. Despite the surface-to-air label, it was also a tremendous threat to ASs. It would shower them with 30mm shells the minute they realized they were there. There was also an enemy AS walking toward the beach in front of the base on patrol. It cast a searchlight over the ocean, coming and going repeatedly over certain places. The AS was one of the French-made Mithril IIs described in the briefing, a squat humanoid form with no head and its main sensors mounted in the crotch. The Mithril IIs had superior armor to the Soviet RK-92 Savages and greater firing precision. Mithril's machines might be more advanced, but Mithrils were nothing to sneeze at if you encountered them in large numbers. Sosuke knew that there had to be more than those two machines, but the buildings and terrain produced natural blind spots that prevented him from tracking their locations. He saw no sign of that AS, the Venom, either. On the beach, he could see the abandoned husk of a burnt-out AS. It was one of the American Dark Bushnells. It stretched one arm up toward the night sky, while its body was twisted as if in agony. It was tragic to think of those men in their second-generation M6s coming ashore, unaware that within minutes they'd be up against an opponent that could outfight even cutting-edge M9s. An hour passed. Dawn came. The underground infiltration team should have disabled the bombs by now, but there was no visible change in the base. The Venom was still nowhere to be seen. Was it undergoing maintenance in the hangar? Was it hiding somewhere, cloaked with its ECS? Or was it under the ocean, creeping toward them right now? What if it had ambushed Mao's team? What if it was attacking Kurtz's? These unfounded questions flitted in and out of Sosuke's mind. He felt like a nervous wreck.
Sergeant Sagara,
Came a call from the M9 beside him, McAllen's.
sir. I've been taking part in AS operations for 9 years now.
Sosuke waited curiously.
So, I've seen good machines and bad ones. And from what I've seen, that's a pretty good machine you're in right now. Just put in your usual effort and you'll be fine. This is business as usual. Got it?
Maybe McAllen was trying to show concern. He always seemed like such a nagging, stuffy man, but that, too, came from a strong sense of responsibility as a commander in the field.
Yes, Captain, sir.
But despite his acknowledgment, Sosuke couldn't fully purge from his mind the image of that mauled M6, lapped by the waves. Not long after, he heard a muffled explosion from the direction of the base. It sounded like it had come from under the storehouse. For a second, he thought that the bombs attached to the chemical weapons had gone off. But that wasn't it. It was smaller in scale. Black smoke began to rise from the building's entrance, and the enemy soldiers on patrol began shouting to each other.
It's begun.
Sosuke flipped the voice command switch on his stick.
Al, power level to military.
Roger. GPL military. Output increasing. 20. 30. The machine's AI, Al, spoke to him in a deep male voice. The generator's output, which he'd been keeping at minimum, began to slowly rise.
Urus 2 here. We've taken out the detonators. I repeat, we've taken out the detonators. Proceeding above ground now.
Mao's report put an end to their communications blackout. They must have successfully disarmed the bombs.
Urus 6 ready to roll any time. Urus 10, what he said.
These reports came from Kurtz and Nguyen of the sniper team. 760, 70, 80. The generator's power surged through the body of the arbalest. Sparks of electricity crackled from the joints with a pale blue glow. Its electromagnetic muscles creaked and its body trembled. 90, 95, 100.
Time to go.
Sosuke took in a deep breath, and then, Urus 1 to all units. Hunting season is open. Attack!
Roger.
Sosuke pulled the throttle trigger on his left stick as hard as he could. The aquatic pack's pump jets burst to maximum output. A geyser erupted behind him, as if from an explosion. The force of it jolted his body. His machine burst to the surface, kicking up plumes of water as it streaked toward land. Accelerate. Accelerate. The knots reading on his speedometer continued to rise, and the machine vibrated wildly. The arbalest skated closer to the beach, tearing through the waves. 150 meters. 100 meters. The patrolling Mithril II noticed and took aim with its rifle.
Object on course. Straight ahead. Unable to dodge,
he thought. Silently, he set the arbalest's head-mounted machine guns to full automatic. He poured on 12.7mm rounds at a rate of 100 per second. They sparked off the enemy machine's durable armor, but it still hunched over, reflexively, to shield its sensors. The act bought him a few seconds. It was more than enough. The arbalest hit the beach at full speed and leaped low across the ground. Sand went flying as it rolled, carried by momentum to slam straight into the opposing machine. There was a powerful crash, and the arbalest and the Mithril II collapsed in a tangle of mechanical limbs. The enemy machine quickly sat up and thrust its monomolecular cutter bayonet at the arbalest, but the arbalest had already pressed a shot cannon into its side. It fired. The point-blank 57mm shell sent the Mithril II flying back, nearly bisected at the waist. Oil sprayed from the wound for just a second before it hit the ground, spitting fire.
That's one.
The first kill reawakened Sosuke's soldiers' instincts. There were more explosions coming from the base. Kurtz's sniping and Nguyen's missiles. McAllen had also successfully made landfall. He used an anti-tank dagger to take out the artillery, then pulled a carbine from his back and went on the hunt. Sosuke righted his machine immediately and ejected the aquatic pack clasped over the machine's torso. The explosive bolts activated and broke it in two. He leaped the arbalest at a newly arrived Mithril II. Aim. Fire. Dodge. Search. Aim again.
That's right. This is my body. It's just like always. Nothing has changed.
Fight. Defeat. Destroy. Cut. Strike. Slice. Burn. Crush.
It's so easy,
Sosuke realized. The venom was nothing, just another mission objective, no matter what name they gave it. His job was to destroy it by any means necessary. Forget about protecting others, he reminded himself. That's all that matters. He would lodge his teeth into the venom's windpipe until the breathing stopped. Come out and face me. Same time frame, 30-meter depth, central control room, Tuatha De Danaan. It started. M9 ADMs are signaling that hostilities have begun, the combat intelligence officer said with a hint of nerves. All of them? Tessa asked from the captain's chair. Affirmative, ma'am. Then it's time to surface, she decided. Raise all ECS masts, MBT to standard blow. Mardukas balked at that order. It wasn't the mention of ECS masts that gave him pause. Those were the devices used to cloak the De Danaan from enemy radar when it was surfaced, so their use was entirely expected. It was the mention of standard blow that shocked him. When a submarine surfaced, to gain buoyancy, it had to set the MBT, the main ballast tanks, to blow. There were several ways to do that. The De Danaan had a special method called silent blow that took more time, but let them maintain a lower profile to ships around them. Conversely, standard blow let them surface quickly, but the rapid expulsion of water generated noise, which made them easier to detect. What's the matter, Mardukas-san? Tessa inquired. Standard blow? You're certain, ma'am? We have little time to lose. Ma'am, he said after a pause, forgive me. Prepare to surface. Mardukas pressed the switch for the diving alarm, and a synthetic siren sound blared out all over the ship. At the same time, the Mother AI's voice rang out. Surface! 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 Standard pressure blow! Standard low pressure blow! Standard low pressure blow, I. Initiate low pressure blow, all MBT. Raise all ECS masts. Activate electromagnetic camouflage. ECS masts, I. First, rising. Second, rising. Third, surface, surface, surface. Flight control room, helicopter squads, start engines. Gebo 3, 4, 5, 6, start engines. All at once, the transport helicopters in the hangar began to rev up their multi-thousand horsepower turboshaft engines. Wreathed in foam, the giant boat began to raise its bow. The floor trembled with a low rumble. The submarine had had enough of holding its breath. It was now letting out a roar. Well, what's going on? Shocked by the sudden vibration and noise, Kaname clamped down the boiling pot of curry. The boat is rising to the surface, the cook responded. Likewise, he was holding a stack of dishes to keep them from falling. Why? Is there some kind of problem? I'm not sure. We don't usually surface with all this noise. Something could have happened to the SRT. To Sosuke? She asked hesitantly. Sergeant Sagara? The cook shrugged. I couldn't say. It also might not mean anything. I see. Kaname looked up at the kitchen ceiling, nervously. Sosuke, will he be okay? August 0405 hours, local time. Barrel Daub Island, Perio Archipelago. Bathed in the glow of the rising sun, two Mithril twos appeared beyond the flames. They broke away from each other at high speeds, then closed in on him while laying down alternating shots of cover fire. A run-of-the-mill operator would try to dodge the shots and get some distance, but not Sosuke. His arbalest stopped running and knelt down in place. The enemy was trying to lock down his attacks, he knew. All their rapid movement and wild fire was just a build-up to their next move, to stop and take careful aim. That's right, he thought. Come after me. The enemy's fire hit the ground around the arbalest, sending up bits of asphalt and puffs of white smoke. A trilling alarm from the AI warned him that it was dangerous to stand still.
Shut up,
he muttered. He readied his machine's shot cannon in both hands, took careful aim, and fired. The shot sent one of the enemies reeling back. Shards of metal went flying, and the Mithril II slammed into the ground. Its severed right leg spun through the air and landed on an abandoned jeep, crushing it. Sosuke fired again. The second machine fell, bounced into a somersault, and exploded. His shot cannon was out of ammo. He wanted to change clips, but there was already another enemy machine bearing down on him. Sosuke rolled the arbalest forward to skillfully dodge its shots. As it sprang back to its feet, the enemy machine cast its rifle aside and drew a melee weapon that resembled a long-handled hammer. It came in range in a second. The hammer swung down. As Sosuke's machine just managed to dodge, the hammer hit the ground and exploded.
a heat hammer?
Sosuke instantly identified the weapon, even as the blast poured over him and he drew his machine back. A heat hammer. It resembled a long-handled hammer, but the head was filled with a powerful shaped charge. Their disposability made them cheap and easy to produce, while still packing enough power to destroy a tank in one hit. The Mithril II tossed the spent shaft aside and pulled out another heat hammer. This one it swung sideways. The arbalest dodged it by a hair. Sosuke grabbed the enemy's shoulder with his machine's left hand. He fixed the shot cannon to the hard point on the arbalest's head, sticking it in its mouth, and used its free right hand to draw a monomolecular cutter. Impact. The two machines slammed into each other. The knife-like cutter plunged into the Mithril II's chest. There was an ear-piercing scream as the enemy machine trembled from the force. Sosuke ignored it as he moved the monomolecular cutter, smoothly tearing the enemy's control system to shreds. That made 4. He pulled out the knife. The Mithril II fell to its knees and then collapsed forward, its wound sparking and smoking. Sosuke replaced his shot cannon's clip, then propelled his machine forward with leopard-like agility, searching for more enemies.
Where is it? Where is the venom?
The arbalest's head had moved back and forth. The ECCS on its forehead was on full blast, emitting radar waves to catch any trace of nearby enemies. Over the radio, he heard reports from various allied machines.
Oro 6, we've taken out all targets visible from here. Bring on some more.
Uru's 12, we're topside. Barracks B secured and locked down. 1 enemy infantry dead, 2 injured. Hostages all safe.
Uru's 10, all confirmed surface-to-air artillery destroyed.
Urus 2, Barracks A secured and locked down. 23 hostages located, all safe. 4 enemy infantry subdued with tasers.
It was going pretty smoothly. Most of the enemy ASs were destroyed, the enemy soldiers were captured, and the base personnel had been rescued, safe under the protection of Mao and Dunnigan. But that most crucial element, the red machine, was still missing.
Uru's 1 to squad. I've had no sign of the venom yet. Anyone seen it? Not even the slightest trace. Report.
Negative was the universal reply to the commander's call. But just then...
No, affirmative. Is this supposed to be a joke?
Mao said.
What is it, Uru's 2?
McAllen's response cut off in a gasp.
What the...
Dunnigan also let out a groan of disbelief. The reason for their confusion was immediately clear. The red AS, the Venom, was in plain sight, standing atop the tallest building of the facility, to the northeast. Its ECS wasn't even engaged.
What's its game?
Sosuke wondered. The diamond-shaped head, the oversized frame, the jagged silhouette, and the red mono-eye. Like a poison dart frog in humanoid form. That was the kind of sharp, dangerous aura that wreathed this new AS. The venom turned its head languidly, lording over the flame-wreathed base. There was a large Gatling gun in its hand, a hard-to-wield but insanely powerful weapon. "Greetings, Mithril friends!" came a voice from its external speakers. Sosuke recognized it, and his heart sank in his chest. "It's been so very long. How I've missed you. Particularly you, Kashim. Or is it Sagara-kun these days?" Gowron. Even before he could say the full name, the enemy cut him off mockingly. "Righto! It's me!" With great effort, the Red AS readied its heavy weapon. And regrettably, that's where I have to cut it off. Much to my chagrin. I have to dip. Ugh. I should really block this spamming whoozy what's it that keeps hopping onto the Twitch channel. Because I don't care. Add to block list. Boom. Easy. Oh yes, breathe the water. That's what your lungs are for. Sorry about that. Wrong tube. Anyway, that's where I've got to call it for today. A short one this week, I realize. And for that, I apologize. Next week will also be fairly short. I don't think we'll be able, as I have some stuff going on that Monday. I don't think we'll be able to bang out the entire. Yeah, because Chapter 5 is massive. So this one is having to be split into each stream being per chapter. So 2 more streams, and we should be done. Oh, this does have some of the line art in it. It has line art of the Tuatha De Danaan. I didn't realize it had that right at the end. I could have listed those stats. So stats to reward people who hung around. So the TDD1 or Tuatha De Danaan, its data, its classification is amphibious assault submarine. Its length is 218 meters. Its beam is 44 meters, sans hydroplanes. Its displacement is 30,800 tons surfaced and 44,000 tons submerged. Its propulsion is 3x PS palladium reactors, electric drive, and 2x shaft, 210,000 HP horsepower. Electric, 2 electric shafts, I guess. Its speed, normal propulsion only, is 30 knots. Its normal propulsion with EMFC, which is a fancy thing it does, is 40 knots. And superconductive drive with EMFC is 65 plus knots. Its armaments are as follows. It has 6 533 millimeter torpedo tubes. It has a 10-cell multi-target vertical launch system. 2x launch tubes for ballistic missiles, a Mark 48 Mod 6 ADCAP torpedoes, AD Harpoon anti-ship missiles, Tomahawk cruise missiles, and the list is not complete. The base model, which is the base model Project 985, features a length of 183, beam 36, length of 183 meters, beam of 36 meters, and a displacement of around estimated 32,000 tons. That being the Soviet sub, I think, that they stole and then remodeled to turn into the Tuatha De Danaan. So yeah, good stuff. So yeah, I've got to run. I apologize. If chapter 4 was like half the length, we'd have fit it in because I'd have time. But as it is, I can't go for another hour, unfortunately. So for this week, we've still got Wednesday and Friday to look forward to. On Wednesday, we've got more of Down Below Station by CJ Cherry. We should be hitting the halfway point this week.
And on Friday, we'll be starting Death's End by Shijin Liu. So be ready for that. The final installment of the Remembrance of Earth's Past series. Trilogy, anyway. Does this have a Dramatis Personae segment in front? It does, but it's pretty short, and I think these are all people from... Yeah, those are all old cast. It doesn't have a new cast one. Um, I don't know if I can read the table of errors because that is sort of spoilery. Anyway. Yep. So we will be wrapping up that series when we finish that book, which will be months from now. After we get that done, we'll get started on the Ascension Factor, which is the last volume of the Pandora sequence by Frank Herbert and Bill Ransom. The last book, the Ascension Factor, is mostly Bill Ransom's work, since by the time it was released, Frank Herbert had died, if memory serves. But like they had collaborated together on everything beforehand and had done a bunch of work on it already before that occurred. So he is still a co-author, as far as I'm concerned, and it's certainly as far as Bill Ransom is concerned. He gives I forget if it's a preamble or an afterword that gets into it. Anyway, that'll do it for today. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. If you are listening to this after the fact and want to catch me live, you can do so, as I stream these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at about 12 noonish U.S. East Coast time, Eastern Standard Time, or UTC -6. Pretty sure it's UTC -6. That sounds right. Um, Otherwise, if you don't want to, which I realize is not a ideal time for most people, given that those are A, weekdays, and B, in the middle of the day or morning or evening. It's not perfect timing. I acknowledge this, but it's the timing that works out best for me most of the time. Unless I do a major overhaul of how my general schedule works, which I will tell anyone about as soon as it's going to happen, which probably will not be anytime soon. I will keep people in the know if it's going to occur. It isn't, but I'll keep people in the know if it is. Anyway, I think that's it. Hopefully people had a good weekend. Oh yeah, I'll be updating the playlists for these at the end of the month. So end of next week, probably beginning of next month. We will get that taken care of. Yep. I don't know what I'm going to do for Mecha Mondays after I get through Full Metal Panic Collector's Edition 1, Volume 1. I'll find something to do. There's plenty. There's plenty. I don't know if I want to go straight to the next volume or not. I have not decided. So there. Anyway, I'll see you all later. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other. I don't ask for much. I don't feel I'm so demanding on you peoples. And I'll see you all next time. Toodaloo!